This is Athletes as Educators with former pro basketball player, championship winning coach, and author Angela R. Lewis. Angie Lewis interviews current and former athletes who are passionate about sharing the lessons they've learned and the experiences that have shaped their lives. A resource for parents, a guide for student athletes, a source for current and former athletes, keys to transition off the court. Welcome to the Athletes as Educators podcast with Angela R. Lewis.
Welcome to this episode of Athletes as Educators. I'm your host, Angie Lewis. On the podcast today, we have Dr. Damien Hodge. Damien played basketball at East Tennessee State University. At Tennessee State University, he went on to get a master's in sports management and a doctorate in education. Is a mentoring specialist, works in educational administration at Tennessee State, and works for FTH International Educational Services. Damien, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, will you talk a little bit about why basketball has such an impact on your life?
Well, growing up where I grew up, there was nothing to do but, sort of play sports. And I sort of gravitated towards basketball at the age of 7. And I actually was a better football player. But I just loved basketball so much that I decided that, and I was so small, and I was just afraid of getting hit. I just hated to get hit. So I remember at an early age that basketball was probably going to be my sport of choice. So it turned out to be pretty okay.
Now, a lot of players are going through this college recruiting process, and a lot of people start, like you said, when they're really young, and a lot of kids have aspirations to go in and play college ball. What was that recruiting process like for you, and what advice do you have for young athletes who are now going through it?
Right. That recruiting process I thought it was one of the highlights of my life at the time. I went from not getting a phone call to being in the top 20 at an all-star camp in Georgia. I was in the top 20, and by the time I got home, the phone was ringing off the hook. And I just thought it was cool. My best friend and I would come home every day after school and just open up all my mail from different colleges. And it was fun. It got hectic at the end a little. It sort of got, it got old a little, but it was so great and so awesome to be wanted. But I would tell young athletes today to just take it all in stride. It only happened once. It's only going to happen once for you, typically, unless you can make it, to the next level. But it can be a great process. Make sure you weigh all your options. There's so many more options today than there were, 20 years ago, that you can sort of navigate a little bit better. Players and parents are a little smarter than they were back then. All we wanted to do was go to college, so we didn't really care, what the underlining, thing was. So I would say to stay focused on definitely school, but enjoy the process, because and just go on that great ride. Go on all your recruiting visits, because they're free. They're flying you in, and they're taking good care of you. So take advantage of all of those and find your fit. Not only are they trying to figure out if you're a good basketball player and a good fit, socially, you got to figure out if they're a good fit for you as well, and that's important.
That is super important. You mentioned something that was rather nostalgic about coming home and opening all the letters. I played college ball. I did the same thing. Do you still have any of your letters?
I do. It's so funny. I do. I have. It was one that stood out more so than the rest of them. When East Tennessee was recruiting me, I had already had letters from Cincinnati, Florida State, and some Georgia, and some other schools. And I remember the University of Cincinnati, Bob Huggins sent me a letter, and it was personal. So that's when it's kind of serious when they actually put the ink, themselves on the card. And he talked about how great I was and how I could help them go to the Final Four. And then he sort of just tapered off after that. But East Tennessee, what drew me to them is the very first phone call. I'll never forget it. The guy said, and his name is Jeff Lebo, and I don't know if you remember Jeff Lebo. He played at North Carolina,
Okay.
and it was his first. He was assistant coach at East Tennessee. It was his first job. So I was actually Jeff Lebo's very first recruit.
Oh, okay.
And I remember him saying, "Is it okay if I continue to call you?" And nobody else had said that. And what made me sign with East Tennessee State is I had a low ACT score, but I was okay, academic wise, GPA wise, and nobody would sign me early but East Tennessee State. Everybody else wanted to wait to see if I was going to pass that test. And I remember East Tennessee called me and said, "Your scholarship papers will be in the mail on the early signing period. We'd love to have you. We think we know for a fact that you're going to make it." And that spoke volumes to me. That said, we got faith in you. We know that you can do it. We definitely know what you can do on the basketball court, but we think you're smart enough to do it as well. So it was a no-brainer for me, and they flew me in on a visit, and it was just fantastic. They treated me very, very well. I'm still in contact with most of those guys that played before, that was there before me, and some that came after. It's a great family, and even though I transferred, I'm still connected and a part of that family. So that's wonderful.
It is great to know that they believed in you in spite of not having a great ACT score. But there are a number of students, depending on the preparation, you may not score really high on the ACT, but there's still an opportunity to play at that next level. You mentioned
Absolutely.
that you transferred. Why did you transfer? I know we talked about it a little bit before, but why did you transfer? And what was the process like of sitting out? How did you deal with that?
When I transferred, I transferred because I didn't make all the right choices that I needed to make, and it was a maturity level that I just wasn't there, and my choices didn't add up to, wasn't conducive to being a part of that team, and I was frustrated. They were frustrated with me, and we both sort of mutually decided that it was best for me to transfer. And so I just came back home to Middle Tennessee, and it's funny. When I got home, MTSU called me and was like, we want to talk to you, that sort of thing. And so I went in and spoke with them, and they wanted me to go to a community college, junior college at the time, and I just felt like my skills were way beyond, junior college, and some of those guys, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to step down.
Yeah.
So I sat out at Tennessee State and ended up, with a scholarship there that next year.
So what was the process like of sitting out? How did you deal with that? Because as a baller,
I played every day. There were some pros that I played with a lot of pros in the summertime at the YMCA, and there were so many leagues, at the time, and it was some great competition, and I was known as one of the hoopers around here, that could, so I stayed busy, doing it. Was tough because you see your team, playing on TV and that sort of thing, and it was tough, and I had already had a taste of being in the NCAA tournament and winning, a game in the tournament. I was on that 1992 East Tennessee State team that beat Arizona in the first round of the NCAA tournament and lost to the Fab Five in the second round. That Michigan team with those fabulous five freshmen. So so my experiences had sort of taken me here, way up here, and I just didn't want to. I wanted to stay at that level.
Right.
And to be able to play. But it was a tough transition, but it was good in a lot of ways as well, because I kept playing, and I played all the time with people who were pros, people who had played overseas, ex-college ball players, just it was great competition. to get out there with those guys. So I stayed in shape, but it was tough.
What was the most challenging part, in addition to seeing your team on TV or watching them play? What were some other challenges with being in that space of not playing for that year? And I ask this because a lot of players are transferring, one, but I don't think they fully understand what that experience is like, having to sit out. So can you shed even more light on that?
I think people sort of look at you as not being coachable
Yep.
when you transfer. It's like, there in whatever tag you have there, that tag is certainly going to follow you, wherever you go. So I think that in transferring and in keeping your dignity, you have to sort of do it quietly.
Okay.
Because if you don't, it can really hinder you, you know, going forward. And even if you're good enough to play at the next level, that tag still follows you. And if it's negative, it could cost you money,
Yep.
down the line. We see it every day with people, projected as a top five, but because they acted a fool, 4 years ago,
Yep.
they're they dropped all the way down to the 20,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Um, it's a tough transition, but I think focus puts it in perspective, and just being able to do it as quietly as you can, and that's sort of what I did. I was sort of and there was not you know my coaches. I remember my head coach's wife was just crazy about me.
Mm-hmm.
She just loved me. And he did as well. My coaches were great coaches and they treated me well. It just wasn't a good fit at the moment because I wasn't in a good place,
Yeah.
um, I think mentally. So there's a lot of challenges in playing athletics. It's you got a different set of challenges, in high school. In high school, I'm the superstar, so it's my team. I'm the superstar for you know 3 years.
Yeah.
So you get to college, everybody's just as good as you. So it's a tough transition. So you gotta step your game up. And then if you're ever fortunate to go to the next level, that's on the whole. I wasn't fortunate enough to do that, but I think I could have. Everybody just don't get to that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Very few people play at that level, but there are a
right,
lot of really good players who don't make it to that level for various reasons, and that's cool too.
right,
I think part of the importance of this podcast is for young athletes who are listening, for them to know that you can have a very successful, happy, fulfilling life and not
yes,
be in the NBA and
absolutely,
still play college ball and still be extremely well educated and do things that matter in this world beyond playing sports. And clearly
absolutely.
you've done. Will you talk about your motivation for going beyond your bachelor's and master's and getting your doctorate and what that meant for you and your family?
You know, being a first generational college student is a whole another set of things in itself. What motivated me to graduate one, then to graduate a second time, and
Mm-hmm.
then to graduate a third time is when I was at Tennessee State. We played Arkansas, University of Arkansas, and Nolan Richardson, and I had a great game. That game, and my team, we had a really good team, and we were certainly poised to make a run down the stretch and get in the NCAA tournament and probably make some noise. We had some great shooters. Um, I was cat quick, so we had it rolling. We just had it rolling. And remember, after that game, I had about 9 assists and 0 turnovers. I broke the press numerous times. They just, I just get it and go. They couldn't trap me.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. We played a great game. Had them down and ended up losing probably by about 6. But after that game, we went home to play a game, and I remember being on the court, and our NCAA compliance coordinator um, and my head coach called me in the locker room, and I was subsequently told that I was academically ineligible,
Mm-hmm.
and that I remember, and all my friends from my hometown had came to the game, and looking forward to seeing me, and I just wasn't there, so I just got my car and I just went home, and it was a very, very trying time for me. It was so upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
But they told me, in essence, you can't perform academically to be able to play this game, and they were at that moment they were adding fuel to that law. They was adding fuel to that fire,
Mm-hmm.
and that fire burned in me, and I graduated. I went forward. I actually dropped out of school after that, and I just sort of was depressed. And I went back and said, you know what? Let me prove these people wrong. And I graduated. Then I left and went to Cincinnati
Okay.
and went to Xavier University, and I graduated again. But that wasn't good enough for me. So I actually started my PhD at the University of Louisville.
Okay.
And then my mom passed, and so that sort of sent me in a sort of a tailspin a little again. So I came back to Nashville to finish that doctorate. And all the guys I've played with at East Tennessee State and Tennessee State, it's only 2 of us with terminal degrees. One of my other teammates from Tennessee State has his law degree,
Mm.
and he's in Chicago. And we're the only 2. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I wanted to prove them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to prove to the NCAA that they made a mistake, that I'm smart enough to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so I set out to make that happen. And in the process, I became Dr. Damien Hodge. It's worked out pretty well.
The fact that you continued on is rare. I mean, I'm sure we both know plenty of athletes who become ineligible and they go home like you did, and then they do nothing. Like, they don't even
Right.
continue to pursue. Their pride is hurt. They feel they're embarrassed. They don't think it's possible. But you made
Right.
the decision to go back and to prove everyone.
Absolutely.
Now, a couple things that we know for sure is that none of us make it in this world by ourselves. Who are the
Right.
people who inspired you, mentored you, motivated you to get to where you are?
Wow. I I have a number of people, and that I really appreciate you asking me that question. That was a great question. Kendall Stevens, my pops, he wrote me and wrote. He stayed on me every single day. You got to finish your degree. You got to do this. You got to do that. He gave me so much tough love. I also had a professor by the name of the late Dr. Harry Beeman. He was the first black basketball official in the SEC,
Mm.
and just a phenomenal, phenomenal man that made me step up and get this thing done. I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. I remember when I had stopped playing basketball, I went into Dr. Beeman's office, and I was sort of floating around and playing around. And Dr. Beeman looked at me. I said, Dr. Beeman, I need your help to get in. I need to get back in school. He looked at me and said, Damien, if you don't get the hell out of my office and don't come back until you're serious.
Mm.
He made me so mad. And I walked away. You know how long I walked away? I didn't have my degree at all. I
Mm-hmm.
walked away for 2 years. And one day something hit me, and I went back to Tennessee State, and I walked in Dr. Beeman's office, and I just cried. And I said, Dr. Beeman, please help me. Please help me. And he looked at me, and I remember it, it so vividly. And he said, I knew you were coming back. He said, I knew what your character was made of. I was just waiting on you. And, it started me on that path, So I've had great people. Just, my mom was just so instrumental. My mom wanted me to get a doctorate way more than I wanted it. And so when I did it, it was really for her, because I felt like I didn't really feel like I had anything to prove, because I know that I'm smart enough to do whatever I want to do.
Right.
But this was, and God rest her soul, she's deceased, but it was what she wanted. It was like she wanted it so bad. And I've never started anything that I didn't finish.
Okay.
So it was very, very important that, I finished that. And so with that being said, those three, my sisters, I got, two older sisters that smacked me upside the head, and, boy, you better get it, better get yourself together and do what you're supposed to do. And I've had a host of other people, James Shannon, Jimmy Shannon, a great person who has helped me since the time I was 11 years old. He saw a lot in me that I didn't always see in myself, and he sort of, helped me along the way as well. So there's several people that God has put in my pathway to sort of help me navigate through this thing called life, that, ultimately, through education, that, can ultimately make you a productive citizen in this society.
Yep, absolutely. It's great that you're able to pinpoint people at different turning points in your life, because
Yes.
none of us make it out here alone. And what's ironic, and I think is wonderful, is that your work and your study, your dissertation, was all about mentoring and the impact of mentoring on African American males. Will you talk a little bit about your research and the impact that it's had in the work you're doing with students?
Well, it's I looked at African American males persistence towards graduation, and I looked at three constructs in that persistence, and I looked at mentoring, self-determination, and locus of control. Mentoring overwhelmingly was a deciding factor. Whether that be peer mentoring, me mentoring someone, and this was in PWIs, which is predominantly white institutions, as well as HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. Mentoring is so important in this society, especially for those students who are underrepresented. They need someone to catch them on the front end and help them navigate through. And by the time, as a freshman, you get a sophomore, junior that catches a freshman in the beginning. By the time he's a sophomore, junior, he's mentoring. It's just a revolving door, and you're able to lift as you climb as well. And it's been so important, and it's part of what I do every single day now. And mentoring, on college campuses doesn't always entail academics.
Absolutely.
You wear so many different hats. So, 1 minute I'm a counselor. The next minute I'm an advisor. Then I'm a father, and I wear so many hats, because students don't realize that not only are you going to college, but there's so many other pitfalls that you have to be able to navigate.
Yeah.
I was telling a young lady yesterday who came into the office, and she, talked about being a part of the district attorney's internship. And I said, so what do you want to, what's your major? political science. I'm thinking, district attorney, political science, English, if you want to be a lawyer, or, criminal justice. Well, I said, I want to be a district attorney. I said, you want to be a lawyer? I want to be a district attorney. I said, well, you got to be a lawyer first before you're a district attorney. Yeah, you're right. What's your GPA? 2.5. Sweetheart, that's not going to cut it. So you have to have those serious conversations. And we had a diehard conversation. And this is what I love most about what I do, is because I'm able to give them real life situations. And I think we, at institutions don't do that enough. And I gave her so many different scenarios about paying now, what it gets you, and playing later. But the only way you get to this is to be focused. And I said, you did not bargain for this conversation, did you? No, sir, I didn't. She said, but thank you. So, you have to help them along, and you have to give them those scenarios. That's, I said, I'm not telling you anything that was told to me. I'm telling you what I've been through. This is where you're headed with a 2.5. I said, you want to put yourself in position. I said, what law school you want to get into? You want to go to University of Chicago. You want to go to Vanderbilt. You want to go to Harvard. You want to be able to go there if that's where you want to go. You want to put yourself in position. So that's what mentoring is all about. It's about grabbing those kids and showing them what their worth is, showing them what they have to do, how hard they got to work. If you got a test on Monday, guess what? You can't go to the football game Saturday.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
You can't go on a date with your girlfriend or your boyfriend. You got to tell them that you got to do this.
Yep.
I said, that's part of paying now so you can play later. I said, you understand? You're right. I said, but football game is coming up in a week, and I guarantee you're going to be flirting with some of these things. I said, your friends who want you to go to those games, they're going to still be at TSU in the year 2020. I can assure you. I've seen them. I said, so are you going to be there with them, or are you going to law school? I said, you got to figure that out now. So those are, some of the conversations that, I have real, and that's why they love me, because I shoot straight. I'm a straight shooter, and I give it to them just like it is. Because when you get outside in that world, the world does not care about any of that. All they care about is if you're going to produce for them. If you're not going to, if you can't show them how you're going to produce, you're not worth anything.
No.
And those conversations are not cookie cutter. They are serious.
You made some really good points about having the real conversations with young people, and especially young athletes, and especially young athletes who are minority.
Yes.
Who come from inner cities.
Yes.
Come from disadvantaged backgrounds, because there are so many rules to the game that you just don't know. Will you talk a little bit about their transition from playing college sports to not playing, and how to best navigate that?
I talk to athletes that are seniors, practically every week. Mm-hmm. And my conversation with them is, what's your prospects like as far as, playing at the next level? And if they say I got a good shot, none of them have told me that they were shoe-ins. So if you're not a shoe-in, then you need to start executing plan B. Mm-hmm. And that's what I tell them. If you want to play basketball overseas or whatever, definitely do that, because you're young and you got the opportunity to do that. But where are you? How close are you to graduating? Bring me, all your transcripts, bring me everything that you have so I can see where you are and where you're going, because you need to leave here with a degree. And for some, they go straight into, some graduate assistantships. I just helped one of our track runners. He just graduated in May and just started a master's program in Georgia at Life University. So I help, and that's part of what I do. I'm a coordinator for graduate and professional studies. So what I do is help people, see if they want to go to graduate school or professional school, and I put them in position to do that. So, and I do that every single day. So that transition sometimes can really be tough because you get a lot of athletes who just don't want to give it up, and it's time. And it doesn't take me but 5 minutes to look and see, if you can play or not. It just doesn't take that long. And, I can look at someone and say, well, he got a shot at playing, overseas, or he might have a shot at the NBA, or he may have a shot at the NFL, but it's few and far between. It really is. So the transition can be tough, but you have to put them in position to see what they want to do, for the rest of their life. Where do they see themselves? They want to work in athletics. They want to get their graduate degree. I always, encourage them to further their education. Bachelor's degrees just sometimes it just doesn't mean much. It just means that you completed something, and that's great because it says that you completed something. But so many people and so many companies and institutions want specialized degrees. They want you to dig a little deeper, and that's sort of where the world has headed in the last several years. So I get a lot of people that want to be athletic trainers and want to work, sport management, and, some, they want to be physical therapists and that kind of thing. So I just help them navigate in those directions.
What are some intangibles that you would say are essential for any student graduating, whether it be a college athlete or someone who's not an athlete? What are some skills that they're going to have to be competitive? Some of the intangibles and things that I know that they absolutely have to have is they have to be able to forge relationships. They have to be able to represent themselves very well. They have to be able to speak well. And I teach them some of those things. We sit down and we do mock sessions in a lot of different areas, interviewing, for jobs. We just have Q&As about, life, and just talking about yourself and how you present yourself. I talk to them about, your attire and what you should look like, what that person looked like in that job. There's so many, and I'm so glad you asked that. But they have to have the wherewithal. And some of those things you have to teach them because a lot of them don't know. Yep. Like a lot of them don't know that you got to cut all that stuff off your face because it doesn't look right. You gotta have a regular haircut because you're already, Yep. So you gotta be different. You gotta be way better. So you got to look like where you're going. And that's a lot of what I talk about. And again, just being able to network and forge those relationships. And I talked to a freshman who had, I was so glad that he came in my office. He just came in and said, Dr. Hodge, I hear that you're the person that I'm supposed to talk to. I said, oh, you did? I said, he told me his name, and he's from Detroit, and he's a freshman. How many freshmen take the initiative? Yeah, that's huge. That shows a lot of character in this young man.
Yes. And I told him that, I said, son, you are going to do some great things. That's called focus.
Yep.
That's called I know why I'm here.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's so, you know how hard it is to get people to come in. There's so much going on and they're having so much fun that this guy says, let me go find Dr. Hodge and see what he's talking about.
Exactly.
You know,
One thing that a lot of young athletes and young people in general don't understand, and you know, we didn't understand this when we got older
right.
as well, is you never know why people cross your path,
That's
how they're
right.
going to resurface in the future, and how you can create mutually beneficial connections. You have no idea.
Right.
You reached out to me on LinkedIn, and here we are doing
Right.
this.
Right.
You just don't know.
You don't. You just never know. You just never know. You're absolutely right. But some of those intangibles you gotta have it. You definitely gotta be you gotta be able to speak. It's so important. It's just so important. And I haven't, you know, I've personality play a big part in it. I've always been an outgoing person. I've you know, I can be in a crowd of 100 people, and by the time I'm done, I know 50 of them.
Right.
You know, it's just, you know, and they're looking, going, that guy, I like that guy. You know,
Yep.
I just forge those relationships because you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know what, you know, what you're gonna. I ended up. I was at a restaurant sitting down. I was eating a what was that? I was eating a wrap, some sort of wrap. This guy comes and sit next to me and he said, man, that looks good. I said, you should try this. He said, what is it? I said, just try it. So I had, you know, he was a scout for the Boston Red Sox. And he said, man, you are too cool. He said, are you ever in Boston? I said, not very much. I said, but my son lives up in Albany, New York. He said, you're not a Yankees fan, are you? And I looked at him because I am a Yankees fan. I said, well, he said, you know what? I'm going to give you my card anyway. If you ever want to come to a baseball game, come on to a baseball. You know, you never know.
You don't.
But that stuff has happened to me for years because I've put myself in position.
Yep.
You know, and that's what I teach. That's what I talk to my kids about is you got to be in position. Everybody you meet, smile.
Simple.
I can smile.
Remember that though. So what you're teaching is how to build your personal brand.
Yes.
Because people are going to know you. People like to work with people they like. Like that's
yes.
one that we're not taught growing up. Is people want to work with people that they like, and people want to work with people who are like them by and large in some way, whether it's you're an athlete, whether it's you're from the same city, you went to the same high school, you went to the same university.
You're right.
When you're in a position to be hired, it's all about connection and cultural fit. They want to make sure that you fit into the culture of the organization or the team.
Right. That's right.
It's essential for young athletes to know you can't stay in this little bubble and think that the world is going to open doors to you because you score 20 points a game. Like no one cares when you're done.
Nobody cares about you at all.
Right. Let's get that straight. Nothing. No one cares. I mean, you hope your family still cares, but some of them might fall off because they're not to the games anymore.
It's over.
It's this life thing is not a game. You know, I think
not.
With kids get coddled.
They do.
When you're an athlete, especially a good athlete, and then when you're no longer of use as an athlete, you're on your own. Unless you've done what you're talking about and built those relationships outside of sport.
You're right. You are absolutely right. Wow.
Conversation we don't have enough.
We don't.
And kids don't want to hear it. Because I'm sure you had them. And people had them with us like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I'm a ball, so I can't ball anymore. Well, you know.
Right. I'm a ball till I'm 50.
Right. Which definitely.
and you done at 30.
Dude, some people younger than that.
Yeah.
No, I think the work that you're doing is really important. I think it's great that students have an advocate and someone who's going to be honest with them. And I think it's important that people like yourself continue to tell your story because it wasn't peaches and cream. Like you have a doctorate, but you transferred. You dropped out of school for a minute. You had some really difficult times getting there. And young people need to hear that more often.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're so right.
Yep. So what advice do you have? What advice do you have for young athletes right now who are in college, maybe freshmen or sophomores, and they're trying to find their way?
My advice to athletes and just people, students in general, is sort of universal. You have got to remain focused at all times. And I use focus. Focus is my number one word because I wasn't. And it cost me more than it should have. Because had I been focused, I would have gotten my grades. You follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That not being focused caused me to lose out on some things. And I talk to them, as a young African American or black or brown person, not being focused is the difference in life and death.
You can't be
That's right. It's the difference in life and death, and I talk to them about that. So my advice is to be focused. But as an athlete, chase your dream. It's okay, but understand that there's no substitute for hard work. You just can't substitute it. So work hard at your craft every single day. But also, go to class, be a good citizen, treat people well, and it'll all circle back around for you in such a positive way, and you'll be successful. And that's what I tell all athletes. I mean, and of course, I'm partial to them because I know, and I'm partial because I know what the preparation is,
right.
And I know what it takes to be, I remember having blisters on my feet from running sprints and cutting and do, all the stuff that what happens on that court.
Yep.
Just, but being an athlete has put me in position. It's rare because, and you're in that same boat. It's rare. We're a rare breed because we're able to transition in a lot of different ways that most people who wasn't an athlete don't understand.
Yeah.
See, a lot of people don't understand that we have what it takes to be successful today and tomorrow. And a lot of that is largely due to the fact that we were athletes.
Mm-hmm. Damien, it has been amazing hearing the advice that you have for current athletes and the students that you work with. But I like to ask all athletes this one question before we close. What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self as an athlete is to listen more, be more focused on your craft and what you're trying to do, and be coachable, and you'll go far.
Coachability is important because we always need coaches who do things we can't.
It translates to everything you do in life. That's why, as I was talking earlier about being an athlete, we handle pressure, we're adaptable, mentally tough. There's so many adjectives that I can. That's why, we're able to, when you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to try to get to breakfast, then you got to go to training table because you hurt your leg. Then you got to you got 3 or 4 classes. Then you got practice, and then you got to try to make it to eat that night. That's a repetition every day.
It is.
That prepares you for life.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? It translates. That's why if you got an athlete on your team and you got a deadline to meet, it's like having that guy who gonna take that last shot.
Yep.
It's the same scenario.
It is.
You know what? I want to win.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. We definitely want to win it. And
yes.
We learned, some of them subconsciously come up, and we're competitive in a way that we don't necessarily think consciously about, but it
Right.
forces us
You're
to
right.
move beyond
Right.
average.
Right. So I'll say that, at this stage in life, some of the things, that, my personal statement or my personal credo is to be generous and expert, trustworthy and clear, open-minded and adaptable, persistent and present. That's what I live by in personally and professionally. That's my credo. So
That's phenomenal and a great way to close this out. Dr. Damien Hodge, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experiences. If people want to learn more about you, the work that you're doing, how can they reach you?
they can reach me. I'm at Tennessee State University, and of course, FTH. I can be reached at email dhodge, DHODGE 01 at tnstate.edu. I can be reached there. And also, my phone number at work is 615-963-1522. 615-963-1522. I can be reached. I'm more than willing to you can call me. I'm easy to connect with. If I don't answer, I'll certainly call you back. I answer emails pretty quickly. So I am eager to get out as much of this information as I can, especially to first generation students and people who are trying to navigate through college and athletes who are trying to navigate through their sport and trying to be great at their craft. I am open to communicating. All you have to do is reach out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Hodge. I look forward to working with you in the future and have really enjoyed the interview.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is Athletes as Educators.
Thank you for listening to the Athletes as Educators podcast. Connect with me through the Athletes as Educators Facebook page or at Athletes Educate on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. For more resources and information about today's podcast, you can check us out at AngelaRLewis.com.